Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I'm your host, Alecia Jacobson. Hello, badasses. Welcome to a badass episode that will help you get ready for the year ahead. I'm recording this at the end of December. However, this concept that we're going to talk about today can be done any time of the year. So this is something that you can make space for and implement. So don't let the fact that you don't have a new year hold you back if this is something that you're like, hell yeah, that's something I want to start doing. But before I get into today's episode, I'm riding high because I just got done with my 12-week women's coaching group. It was our last session of the 12 weeks, and it was like mind-blowing. It was probably one of the most satisfying things that I've ever been involved in, like personally, professionally. It was just really wonderful. These women came in and had this openness to being vulnerable and true and just showed up and they got shit done. It was just really neat to see the progress week over week. And I want to share some of the highlights with you. One of them today, she said, and this is really important because it's like the number one thing that I see holds women back from accomplishing their goals. And she said, I can do this in small steps. And that's what we do, a reflection at the beginning of each session. And she was like, I realized I can do this in small steps. I can get anything done in small steps. And she suffers from what many people do. And that's the all or nothing thinking. Like, if I don't do it all right now, then I may as well not get started. And what happens is then you go into like freeze mode and you get nothing accomplished. And then you end up feeling shitty and ashamed that you have a messy house or whatever it is. You're not exercising, you're not eating well, all the things. But she said, I have realized, because this is something that I like hammer home, and it's something that we practice, whether in my 12-week or regular coaching, which is like, we only start small. And that's kind of what you're going to hear in today's episode is it's all about simplicity, like keeping it very simple and small. And what she realized through practice and being uncomfortable is that I don't have to get it all done. I can do anything in small steps. It doesn't really sound as impactful as it plays out in life. Because if you think about it, anything that you do in small steps, let's say like 5 to 10 minutes a day of whatever, that adds up. Or if you eat, healthy food every day, that adds up over a month versus if you just think, oh my gosh, like I have to change everything. I have to eat healthy. I have to exercise. I have to, be the best mom, be the best this, like do all the things. That gets overwhelming and it doesn't get done. But if you just pick one thing and do that one thing really, really well and get good at it, then you can add more things and kind of tack onto it that way. But I was just so grateful that she had come away with that because that is such a good habit to start implementing. And then another one said, I slipped in to old habits. And then she goes, I was like, ew, it didn't feel good because, we're, like I said, I'm recording this in December. We're going into the holiday season and people are feeling stress. And when you are under stress, like that's what we were discussing this last 4 weeks of the circle is stress. And when you are feeling stress, it's really hard to continue with all the things that keep you healthy, whether it's habits, exercise, maybe you get short and snippy when you're stressed. Like, it's hard. And she said, I felt myself slipping back into old habits. And then it felt ew. Like she noticed all the things, the way it felt in her body, the old patterns she used to have, because that's part of change. Once you start changing habits, you are not completely changed. Like you will do really well for quite a while and then you will slip back. And I had just said this to them last week. So she was like, oh, it happened. You slip back. But what happens is when you slip back into old patterns, because they're old patterns, you took a long time to learn them. You naturally will. You recognize it and then you're able to course correct. So you don't slip back forever. You have the tools to course correct. So that was really cool that she was able to really notice like, yeah, I started to slip back. And then I noticed that I was able to get right back onto my healthy way of being. And that was really cool. So it was a really just neat experience for me, for these women to be able to be a part of this group, and today we spent creating their plan because we're done with it. And some of them are continuing in the next group. Some are going to be doing different things. But the most important thing is, what is your plan when you are leaving this container? Because when you come into the group every single week, we are reflecting on what worked, what didn't work, what support do you need. And it's really important that it's not just like, okay, now this is over, and then next week you have completely forgotten about it. So today we spent creating a plan so that everybody walked away with, I know exactly what I need to be doing to take everything that I've learned, the new habits that I have, and take them out and make them work into life. So it's such a beautiful thing. I love this life. But if it's something that you're like, yes, like I have change that I want to make. I want this year to be different. I want the habits that I've been like making myself feel shitty for not having, like this is my year to do that. Send me a message. I'll put the link in the show notes. And I've got my next women's group, the 12-week group, starting January 16th. So that is something that may be a good fit for you. And then you too can walk away with a plan and have a completely changed life, in April. And it sounds so freaking cliche. It drives me nuts that I have to say it, but legitimately, their lives are all so much effing better. It's like the coolest thing ever. So, all right, we are getting into today's episode. We are talking about wrapping up the year that just happened and then looking at the year ahead. And the reason we're doing that, like, I actually hate New Year's resolutions. I'm jaded from being in the fitness industry. And I feel like you're set up to fail with a New Year's resolution if you don't have a solid plan in place. I've met too many people and worked with too many people that are like, well, I do well for 2 to 3 weeks and then it's failed. And I don't know the numbers on it, but I know that the majority of people who set New Year's resolutions do not follow through. And that's exactly why I was saying, like, at the end of the 12 week, like, they left with a clear plan. They either have calendar notes, they have alarm sets, because I know the places that people get tripped up on, and I set them up to not get tripped up in those places. But when you're out setting New Year's resolutions, everybody's doing it. Like, what's your New Year's resolution for the year? I don't like it, because I feel like it just, you're not set up for success with it unless you've really created a good team around it. It just kind of makes people feel more shitty than it does good. So I'm not a big fan of that. But this concept that we're going to talk about today is the simplicity. Like, it takes it and it really just simplifies it down. And it's this idea of one word. And there is a book, I stumbled on it in 2016. It is by John Gordon, Dan Britton, and Jimmy Page. And the idea is you come up with a word for the year. And within that word, that kind of dictates your track, your goal, like, where are you going? So instead of having like 30 different resolutions or this sort of like broad resolution of, I'm going to get healthy or whatever it is, you have this word that sort of, it is your path through the year. It is the lens that you look at life throughout the year. So again, the book is called One Word by John Gordon, Dan Britton, and Jimmy Page, and I will link that in the show notes. But today I'm going to give you my spin on it, the things that I really liked, things that you can incorporate it. And when I read this book, I'm like, oh, I have to share this with other people. So I made a Facebook group and we found our words and we shared support and things like that for each other. And I haven't really done it in a while, but earlier in the week, my word literally just popped in my head. And I was like, okay, I think it would be a good idea if I shared this, and created another group. And there was a ton of interest in this group for it. So then I was like, well, I should do an audio for it to share with people what exactly it is. So if you are not involved in that Facebook group and you are listening to this in December 2023, think of what it was. That's really bad. There is a link to the Facebook group. So go ahead and you can click on that link and you can join it, and you can join us on this one word journey. It's kind of like starting the year without a New Year's resolution, but with a theme, a goal, and a plan. So in finding your one word, it's really important to kind of let it come to you. So it's not really a forced thing. Some people may find it because it's something that they're kind of hearing like a theme in life of like, maybe this word keeps being shown to you. Maybe there's just something that keeps coming up. In the book, they say, get quiet and let the word kind of come to you. They say like unplug and be in silence. And that's how my word came to me. I was in silence. I wasn't, doing anything that caused a distraction in my mind. I was just open. I wasn't necessarily open to the word, but the word just showed up there. And it does that. Like, I'm not unique in that. That has happened to many people. But if you're on this journey and you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing, step one is creating space for the word to come to you. So if you're always busy, which I hate the whole glorification of busy, but if you're constantly filled up, your time, your schedule, everything is always filled, you don't have space for things to come to you. So if there's like things that you are wanting in your life, you have to create space for these things. So to have this word, creating space, it could be in meditation, whatever that looks like, to create that sort of open space in your mind, setting that time aside, making sure there's no distractions, things like that. And this could be end of the day, whenever works for you, but being very intentional with creating some open space in your life to allow this word to kind of arrive in your mind and be shown to you. Some of the questions that they offer to you is, what do I need? I'm just going to say them all in succession here. What do I need? What's in my way? And what needs to go? The last one is actually my favorite, what needs to go, because I feel like like I said, we're so busy and filled that oftentimes there are things that do need to go that are in our way that we don't even know, because they're just cluttering up either our actual physical space, our mental space, our emotional space, whatever it is. There might be things in your world as you look at it as a whole needs to go or is in your way. And oftentimes you're like, well, I don't know. But let me tell you, I actually truly, truly believe with every single fiber of my being is that you actually do know. Sometimes you don't want to know because it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it might require you to do things that are uncomfortable. Sometimes you might not have the skills developed yet to actually figure out what to do with the knowing that you have. But I do believe that you know. So if you kind of have this pull towards something, but it's feeling a little bit like, feels a little like I don't want to go there, so I'm going to kind of ignore it. Pay attention to that, because that is really good information that you do not want to be ignoring. Okay. That goes for anything, because I truly do. I know I've had other podcasts that I talked about your inner knowing. Like, I 100% wholeheartedly believe that you have the knowing inside of you. So if you're thinking about this and you have this knowing of these questions of, what do I need? What's in my way? And what needs to go? And something immediately comes to you and you try to just like bury it back down, that's a little flag for you. Just pay attention, note it, don't judge it. Don't be judgy. Okay. Let's not judge yourself. What are you pulled to? What do you want to create in your life? And then the second step they say is receiving the word. And they say to ask, which like, duh. But they're saying like, ask God. So in the book, it has a very traditional Christian theme when they talk about God. And I have shared this book with many friends who are not of Christian faith. So don't be discouraged by that, because actually one of my good friends who is not Christian had a really big impact on this kind of idea. So if you do not align with that, it still has a really great message if you want to listen to the book. But I am trying to give you a lot of it, kind of package it all up here in this podcast episode. But like God, spirit, source, the universe, whatever bigger power, whatever bigger kind of expansiveness that you connect with, just ask, like, show me what I need to know. Maybe it's show me the questions I need to be asking. What are the things that I want to be bringing into my world? And that's where you have to get uncomfortable with that sort of silence, because we can't get the answers unless we create the space for silence. So creating that space and then asking, what are the things that would be best suited for you? And this is where that meditation process can come in. Being in nature, there's a place that I connect with. My connection is usually water. And I go to places where there's water when I just get quiet and think. I like willow trees also, which It sounds so goofy, but there are places that bring me that sort of Zen-like quietness. And that place, if you have it, is where I would recommend creating that space, whatever it is, and going there if you are able. And now let me just tell you, because mine is a place that's close to my house, you can go there in your mind. So if you have, like, when I say this, if an actual place comes up, like a lot of people, it's like the ocean or the mountains. Like if you're not actually there, you can visualize that space in your mind as you're preparing for this word to be shown for you. So don't let the actual physical space and proximity keep you from having that Zen-like feeling of whatever that is for you. And kind of embrace the feeling. If it feels uncomfortable, it's okay. Just let it be with you and embrace that feeling. And then, like I talked about with the 12-week group, the most important part is, okay, once you have your word, making a plan for it, because oftentimes, like with the resolutions, you have 2 to 3 weeks where you're just cruising along. There's not really any roadblocks. There's not anything that gets in your way. And then, well, bam, life happens. And it's like in the rearview mirror, it's gone. So having a clear plan of this word, and that's what I'm going to make sure that I share with you. And in this Facebook group you're going to have, I'm going to give you another downloadable in the show notes that you can use alongside this word that will be helpful. So my word I'm going to share with you now. My word is and, A-N-D, which sounds very bizarre, but it is so meaningful to me because I have been sort of in this space of, I'm not really like an all or nothing thinker, but I am very set in the way I do things. If you have listened to my episodes or are connected with me in any way on social media, I've talked about like my need to be right, which is a very set way of thinking, which goes in very contrast into all the things that I teach. But it is just like my deep roots of things that I'm constantly like working on. And this idea, I was quiet thinking in my mind, and I was actually thinking about how interesting it is that I have sort of paired this exercise that I'm doing right now, this very intense kind of running exercise. And it really just like, I love it. I love it so much. And I am doing yoga as much as I can. And when I do yoga, I mean, it's kind of like a glorified nap that I stretch in. I'm not one of the people that are like in chaturanga doing chaturanga push-ups or tricep push-ups, whatever it's doing. Like I am not in there for any sort of physical exercise purpose. I am in there to stretch my muscles, to let my brain calm, and to just be. So it's like this very yin yang, like they're not similar, but they are in this duality. I can hold both of them. And that's something that I've really been playing around with lately, is this sort of like duality of I can do this and I can do that. I have been doing it with work where I like to be intense about things. And it's sort of like this intensity, like I can be intense and I can be sort of a chill vibe. Like I can have this kind of restful space. And how can I create that? So I'm going into this next year with this sort of framework of, and another way this shows up is opportunities where it's like, okay, and what else? Like, okay, here's what I've thought of so far. And what else could it be? And is just like in addition to. And so it sort of opens up possibility for me. I'm really excited about the word, which it is like a lot of times people come up with like faith, hope, joy. And I'm not judging these words. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of they make sense, where mine is non-traditional when I think of a word that somebody would pick. But it picked me. And that's part of the being silent and allowing the word to come to you. Now, mine came unintentionally. I wasn't preparing myself for it. But if you want to be intentional, the asking like, hey, whomever, I am making space for this word, show me the word, and it is not necessarily, it's not going to be like a lightning bolt necessarily that comes to you, but just in your days being open to this kind of concept and this idea of having a word. So that's my word and kind of how it hit me and came to me. And there it is. How I plan on living this out is I'm going to make sure it is in front of me. Before, there's been a time where my word was believe, and I painted it on a rock. A couple years ago, I did like a vision board, and I had the word in the middle, and then I did pictures around it of what that word stirred up within me. You can do many different things in order to keep it in front of you, but the thing that you need to make sure that you do is once you pick this word, or once the word picks you, that it is essentially like the filter that you see the world through. In the book, they talk about having different areas that it impacts. What I'm going to offer you, I have a tool called the Wheel of Life, and I'm going to put that in the show notes. And what I'm going to offer is that you take whatever your word is when it comes to you, and you use your word as a lens to look at this wheel of life. So in the wheel of life, there's 12 different areas. There's health, there's finances, relationships, career, all of these spaces. And what I want you to do is look and see, okay, what does this word mean in these spaces? Maybe some of them don't make sense. I don't know. But you can look at all these different areas of your life through the lens of your word. And what does it mean to you? In it, when my clients do the Wheel of Life, we look at it, let's say health, and we look at, okay, where are you now? This has nothing to do with the one word. I'm just telling you how to use the tool. Where are you now? They might say, I'm at a 2. And then my question is, okay, what does this mean to you? If you're at a 2, what does that look like? So then they list all the things that make up that number 2. And then I say, okay, where do you want to be? So for you, when you're using this tool with your word, if you're, at the end of the year, what would this word look like? Like, what do you want to have happen through using this word with this tool? And then list all of those things out. So it gives you sort of a roadmap of where you would like to go. And like I said, some of the spaces, depending on what your word is, because you're coming up with any different word and then filtering it over this wheel of life. So some of them might not make sense, and that's okay. But it's just an added tool that will kind of give you a roadmap of, okay, here's what it means to be now, and here's what I would like it to mean. And then be very detailed about what that is. And then you can fill in the gap of like, okay, here might be the path that I could take and how to make that happen. There could be where you could look at, your month ahead. What does my word in this month ahead look like? If I'm living this word, what am I doing? What does it look like in each day if I'm living this word? Are there certain things that you're looking out for? Like, let's say, like through my word, when I had believing in people. I once had a word, it was service. If I'm being of service to people, what does that look like in each day? If I'm being of service to myself, what does that look like in each day? What does it look like over the course of a week, over the course of a month? So developing a plan that you are intentionally filtering these habits into your day, your week, your month. One of the women in my 12-week group, she said, her plan going forward was she really connected with journaling, and she was going to journal. There were some questions every day she was going to be asking, but it was something that she was going to do daily. So that was her kind of accountability to her plan, is I'm going to be making sure every single day, because journaling is something that I really connect with and I know that I will do. For other people, it may be their calendar. In the book, they suggest creating a group of accountability, which is essentially what I've created with the Facebook group, but you can do this outside of that also. So if you are creating connection with either other people or whatever that is, like what does that accountability, what does that group that you share this with? And that's why, like, when I do my women's coaching circles, when you have the group connection, it solidifies that. You have that accountability. It's like a built-in space for it. So what does you creating something or finding something like that look like out in the world? Maybe you already have something set up. Maybe you have a fitness group that you're with and you're like, hey, I'm doing this. I want you to join me. And you every Monday during your fitness class talk about the things, like have a reflection time. I don't know what it looks like for you, but finding people who are having the same kind of vibes as you and like, yeah, I want to do this, or just maybe they're not doing it, but maybe you're just going to share it with them. But making that plan and having that in place so that you can have that continued connection. Somebody was saying today, one of the things that somebody was going to do was, she's like, I live by my calendar, so I'm going to put stuff in my calendar. And I was like, yes. And let's give you another buffer, because oftentimes I kind of told the story of when I was a kid, my mom used to leave me like sticky notes everywhere of things that I needed to do. Like she'd get up really early in the morning and leave for work. So I'd wake up after her, and then I would have this like plethora of notes in the bathroom of things that she wanted me to do. And after a while, it got to the point where I didn't even notice them. Like it was just like blended in, like camouflage, didn't notice it. And that's how this can be, because either life happens, it just like I put stuff on my calendar where it repeats, and then maybe we don't notice it anymore. So having an added safety net buffer of maybe it's a phone alarm, maybe it's you connect with somebody on the first of the month, every month, whatever it is, have several layers of intentional purpose. And this isn't meant to be like, the whole idea of this is it's simple because it's one word that you filter the entire year through, and it is your guide. So I don't want you to overcomplicate it because that defeats the entire purpose of it, but you just want to have some sort of plan and accountability in place, because January 31st will come and you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when I was doing this, and it's completely gone now. But if you keep it through the entire year, everybody that I know that does this on the regular is like, oh my gosh, the idea completely changed my life. So I'm really excited for those of you who make the space, create the space in your mind, the free space where you're not distracted. Then ask in whatever way, like, be mindful, be open. That's a key word to what you actually need, what the world needs from you, maybe what other people, and not to say like, I'm not a big fan of what can you give other people. This is for you. However, that might be, some people it's family, and maybe it's more family intentional time, but being in, making space to come up with what is needed in this year ahead. And then having that one word be your guide, and then making a plan to implement that one word and a group. And if you're not in the Facebook group, come over there, because I'll be giving so many resources and helping people along the way as they're going through this, so that we have that group connection already built in. And I just want to say, like, in wrapping this up, since it is December and the end of the year, like, thank you. I started the podcast in April, and I'm closing out the year now. And it's just been like, this was the podcast. So talk about goals. The podcast was my only goal for 2023, was to start the podcast, and the wheels and everything got turning in January. And then it was launched in April, which was really cool. And I'm just so thankful for Jamie for producing it and being like the person that keeps me being able to do this. And she has so many great skills. So find the people that will support you and that you can support and connect with, that will help you reach your goals. But I just want to thank you for listening and joining and being a part of this podcast community. All the links will be in the show notes so that you can make the most of this one word journey. And I am really excited to connect with you there in the Facebook group and hear what your word is and how it transforms and what you want to do with it throughout the year. So come join. Let's have some fun with this. And, Happy New Year. Enjoy whatever it is that you're kind of reflecting on and celebrating, and looking forward to the year ahead. All right, badasses. Ciao. Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.